Captain Lee Jiho was having his morning coffee when everything changed. The bridge of his cargo ship suddenly went quiet. Even the constant humming of the engines seemed to pause. His AI assistant, which usually chattered about cargo manifests, and fuel calculations, had gone completely silent. "What's wrong with you today?" Jiho asked, tapping the console. He had been running supply routes between human colonies for 3 years now, and his AI had never acted this strange. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a message that made Jiho's coffee cup slip from his hands. The liquid floated in zero gravity as he stared at the screen in disbelief. There, glowing with an otherworldly blue light, was a royal seal he had only seen in textbooks, the Thixian Empire. The crystal people who lived so far out in space that most humans thought they were just stories. They had never talked to humans before, never even acknowledged that Earth existed. Yet here was their royal seal, addressed specifically to him. Captain Lee Jiho of the cargo vessel Morning Star. The message began in perfect Korean, which was impossible because no human had ever taught them the language. Queen Velandra of the Thixian Empire requests your immediate presence on the royal throne world of Thixos Prime. Jiho read the message 3 times, waiting for it to disappear like some kind of prank. But it stayed there, real and glowing. The coordinates showed a location so far into the outer rim that his ship's navigation system had to calculate the route twice. 3 days, he whispered to himself. They want me there in 3 days. His crew of 4 gathered around the main console, their faces showing the same confusion Jiho felt. Kim Minho, his engineer, was the first to speak. "Captain, this has to be a mistake. Why would alien royalty want to meet a cargo runner from Seoul?" Park Hana, their communications officer, shook her head while studying the message. "The encryption is real. I've never seen anything like it, but it's definitely authentic. This came from something with technology we can't even understand." Jiho's pilot, Choi Deun, was already pulling up star charts. "If we push the engines, hard and skip our next 2 supply drops, we might make it. But, Captain, this could be a trap. We know nothing about these crystal people." The youngest crew member, Yoon Tae-hyung, looked excited rather than worried. "What if they need our help? What if this is humanity's chance to make contact with a real alien empire?" Jiho stared at the message for a long moment. His rational mind told him to ignore it, to continue their supply run and pretend this never happened. But something deeper, something very human, made him curious. Why him? Why now? And why did the message feel less like a request and more like destiny calling? "Change course for Thixos Prime," he finally announced. "And someone clean up this floating coffee before it gets into the air recyclers." As the Morning Star turned toward the unknown, Jiho couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would change everything. Not just for him, but for all of humanity. In the depths of space, ancient eyes were watching and legends were about to become reality. The journey to meet an alien queen had begun. The crystal spires of Thixos Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. Jiho had seen pictures of amazing architecture before, but nothing had prepared him for this. The entire city seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal, refracting light in ways that made his eyes water. "Captain, look at the docking bay," whispered Park Hana, pointing through the viewport. Jiho's jaw dropped. The landing platform was packed with ships unlike anything in human databases. Sleek vessels that looked like they were grown rather than built. Massive geometric craft that seemed to bend space around them, and everywhere alien beings were gathering, all watching his small cargo ship approach. "Why are they all staring at us?" asked Kim Minho nervously. As they disembarked, Jiho felt like an animal in a zoo. Hundreds of alien eyes followed his every movement. He had expected maybe a small diplomatic welcome, but this looked like half the galaxy had shown up to see him. A tall, lizard-like creature with scales that shimmered green and gold was speaking in hushed tones to a shorter, robed figure. Jiho's universal translator caught fragments of their conversation. "Is that really one of them?" the scaled being asked, its voice filled with wonder. "The humans, yes," replied the robed figure. "I heard they once talked a war computer into becoming a gardener." Jiho stopped walking. A war computer becoming a gardener. He had never heard this story, and he was pretty sure no human had ever done such a thing. Near a fountain made of singing crystals, a being that looked like living gas was pulsing with excited colors. It communicated through light patterns that his translator turned into words. My species has stories of humans who survived in the vacuum of space by sheer stubbornness. They say one human rebuilt an entire planet's ecosystem using nothing but seeds and determination. That's impossible, Jiho muttered to himself, but more aliens were gathering, and he caught more whispered conversations. A rock-like creature, whose people were known throughout the galaxy for never showing emotion, was actually trembling with excitement. The legends speak of humans who make friends with their enemies, it rumbled in a voice like grinding stone. They say humans can find hope in the darkest places and make others believe in it too. A group of floating jellyfish-like beings were discussing something that made Jiho's head spin. Remember the story of the human who convinced an entire fleet to surrender by singing them a lullaby? Or the one who solved a 1,000-year-old war by teaching both sides to cook together? Jiho looked back at his crew, who were equally confused. Have any of you heard these stories? He asked quietly. They all shook their heads. Choi Dayun frowned and said, Captain, I think these stories are about us, but not us specifically. It's like we're famous for things we don't even remember doing, as they walked deeper into the Crystal Palace. More aliens pointed and whispered. Some looked at him with hope, others with curiosity, and a few with something that looked almost like worship. The human who turned enemies into family, whispered one. The species that refuses to give up, said another. They find solutions where none exist, added a third. Jiho began to realize something incredible and terrifying. Somehow, without knowing it, humanity had become legend across the galaxy. Not for their technology or their weapons, but for something much more powerful. For being impossibly, stubbornly, beautifully human, and now everyone was watching to see if the legends were true. The throne room was unlike anything Jiho had ever imagined. The walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light, creating patterns that seemed to dance with Queen Velandra's emotions. She stood nearly 3 meters tall, her body a masterpiece of translucent crystal that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. When she moved, it was like watching a living prism. Captain Lee Jiho, her voice resonated through the crystal chamber, somehow speaking perfect Korean. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Jiho remained standing, too nervous to relax. Your Majesty, I'm honored by your invitation, but I have to ask. Why me? I'm just a cargo runner. I deliver supplies between human colonies. Nothing special. The Queen's crystal form flickered with what might have been amusement. Nothing special? She raised one crystalline hand, and the air above them filled with holographic images. Let me show you what the galaxy thinks of your nothing special species. The first image showed a human woman standing in front of a massive robot. The robot towered over her like a building, its red eyes glowing with malice. But instead of running, the woman was talking to it, her hands gesturing calmly. This is Dr. Nam Yuri, the Queen explained. 3 years ago, an ancient war machine, awakened on Kepler 442b. It had been programmed to destroy all organic life. Your Dr. Nam spent 6 hours talking to it about the beauty of flowers, the sound of children laughing, and why life is worth protecting. The machine now tends a garden and teaches alien children about earth plants. Jiho stared at the image. I never heard about this. More images appeared. A human man sharing his emergency rations with strange, furry aliens during what looked like a disaster. A group of humans teaching different alien species to work together to build shelters. A young human girl playing with alien children, all of them laughing despite being in what looked like a refugee camp. Here, the Queen continued, is Engineer Bay Jiwon. When the Zeltron mining colony's life support failed, he had no parts to fix it, so he convinced the colonists to work together, using their own body heat and breathing patterns to create a temporary life support system. 3,000 beings survived for 2 weeks until rescue arrived. The images kept coming, each one more incredible than the last. Humans doing impossible things not through superior technology or weapons, but through sheer determination and creativity. "This is Captain Song Minji," the Queen said, showing a woman standing between two massive alien fleets. The Grolix and Thanid empires had been at war for centuries. Captain Song ended it by challenging both sides to a cooking competition. She said that anyone who could create something beautiful together couldn't truly hate each other. The war ended with a feast that lasted 3 days. Jiho felt dizzy. These can't all be real. Every single one, the Queen confirmed, and there are hundreds more. Humans who turned space pirates into rescue workers by showing them kindness. Humans who survived impossible disasters by refusing to give up hope. Humans who solved ancient conflicts by simply treating everyone like family. She paused, her crystal form growing brighter. What amazes us most is that you don't seem to realize how extraordinary this is. You call these events Tuesday. You act like anyone would do. The same thing. But in 17 star systems, no other species has ever shown such consistent compassion, creativity, and stubborn refusal to accept that some problems can't be solved. Jiho looked at his crew, who were staring at the holograms in amazement. "We're just doing what feels right." "Exactly," the Queen said softly. "And that, Captain Lee Jiho, is why you have become legends." The crystal walls of the throne room suddenly turned dark, like storm clouds gathering. Queen Velandra's beautiful, shimmering form became dim and heavy with worry. The change was so dramatic that Jiho felt his heart skip a beat. "Captain, what I'm about to show you will be difficult to watch," the Queen said, her voice now carrying a weight that made the air feel thick. "But you must understand what we're facing." The holographic display above them shifted, showing a peaceful solar system with 3 inhabited planets. Green worlds with cities that sparkled like jewels, space stations orbiting like mechanical moons, and ships moving peacefully between worlds. "This was the Kalari system," the Queen explained. "Home to 8 billion souls across 3 species. They were artists, philosophers, and scientists. Their music could make crystalline beings like myself weep with joy." Jiho watched as dark shapes appeared at the edge of the system. At first they looked like a cloud of space debris, but as they moved closer, he could see they were machines. Thousands of them, each one perfectly geometric, moving in patterns that hurt to look at. "The entropy swarm," the Queen whispered. "We don't know who built them or when. They might be older than any civilization we know. All we know is what they do." The machines reached the first planet. Jiho expected to see explosions, warfare, the usual destruction that came with invasion. Instead, something far more terrifying happened. The planet simply began to disappear. Not destroyed, not broken apart, but systematically reduced to nothing. The cities faded first, then the oceans, then the very rock of the planet itself. "They don't destroy," the Queen continued, her voice barely audible. "They unmake. Every atom, every molecule, every tiny piece of matter gets broken down into its most basic components, and then nothing. They leave behind pure void. Empty space where worlds once lived. The second planet suffered the same fate, then the third. Within days, an entire solar system that had existed for millions of years was gone. Not even dust remained. 14 civilizations, the Queen said, turning away from the horrible display. The mighty Gorkon Empire with their planet-sized war machines couldn't stop them. The ethereal collective, beings of pure energy who could reshape matter with their thoughts, were consumed in hours. The ancient archives, a race so old they remembered the birth of stars, were erased from existence. Jiho felt sick. His crew stood in stunned silence. Park Hana was wiping tears from her eyes. "How long do we have?" Jiho asked quietly. "They're 3 systems away from the outer human colonies," the Queen replied. "At their current pace, maybe 6 months before they reach Earth itself." "And you want our help?" Choi Deon spoke up, her voice shaking. "We don't have planet killers or energy beings. We're just humans with normal ships and normal weapons." The Queen's form brightened slightly, a glimmer of hope returning to her crystal features. "That's exactly why we need you. Every species that faced the swarm tried to fight them with bigger weapons, more powerful technology, superior force. But humans, you don't think like that." She gestured to the earlier holograms of human heroics. You solve problems others can't solve. You find hope where others see only death. You make friends with enemies and turn disasters into opportunities. But this is different, Kim Minho protested. Those were people problems. This is something that unmakes entire worlds. Yes, the Queen agreed. And that's why every logical approach has failed. We need someone who doesn't think logically. Someone who looks at the impossible and says, let me try anyway. Jiho stared at the empty space where the Kalari system had been, somewhere in the Yai. Darkness, ancient machines were moving toward Earth, toward everyone he had ever loved. What exactly are you asking us to do? The Queen's light pulsed hopefully. Save the galaxy, Captain. In whatever impossible, illogical, beautifully human way you can think of. The alien council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were talking at once, their voices creating a symphony of confusion and disbelief. Jiho stood calmly in the center of it all, waiting for the noise to die down. Captain Lee, rumbled the rock-being ambassador from Granite 7th, his voice like boulders grinding together. Perhaps I misunderstood your words through the translator. Did you just ask for books? Not just books, Jiho replied with a slight smile. Music, art, stories, poetry, historical records, everything that makes different cultures who they are. A tall, blue-skinned diplomat with 6 arms gestured wildly. The entropy swarm has destroyed entire fleets. They turned the Kalari system into empty space. And you want to fight them with songs? The gaseous being that had been excited to meet humans earlier was now flickering with confused energy patterns. Captain, forgive me, but this seems unwise. These machines have shown no interest in communication. They simply consume and move on. Queen Valandra raised one crystalline hand, and the chamber fell silent. Captain Jiho, please explain your reasoning. The Council needs to understand. Jiho looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked worried, others looked like they thought he was crazy. A few seemed curious about what he was thinking. Tell me, Jiho began, what do you think the entropy swarm wants? To destroy everything, snapped a reptilian ambassador. To consume matter, added another. To spread chaos, suggested a third. Jiho shook his head. But why? Think about it. These machines are ancient, probably older than most of our civilizations. They've been traveling through space for maybe millions of years, systematically breaking down matter into basic components. Why would someone build machines to do that? The chamber was quiet now, everyone thinking. Every intelligence wants something, Jiho continued. Humans want connection, safety, purpose. Your species want different things too. But want always comes from need. What if the entropy swarm isn't destroying because they're evil? What if they're searching for something? A small furry alien near the back of the room spoke up. Searching for what? I don't know yet, Jiho admitted. But I have a theory. What if they were built to solve some kind of problem? What if they're looking for a specific pattern, a particular arrangement of matter or energy that they haven't found yet? Kim Minho, who had been quietly listening, suddenly understood. Captain, you think they're hungry for information? Exactly, Jiho nodded. Think about what makes each of our cultures unique. It's not our technology or our weapons, it's our stories, our music, our art, the way we think and feel and create. That's information that can't be found by breaking down matter. The Queen's crystal form brightened with interest. You believe they might stop their consumption if they found what they're seeking? Maybe, Jiho said, or maybe I'm completely wrong and they'll just break down my ship and me along with it. But here's the thing about humans. When we don't know the answer to something, we try to find out. The blue-skinned diplomat waved his arms in frustration. This is madness. You want to fly directly into certain death based on a guess? Every great discovery in human history started with someone saying, what if? Jiho replied calmly. What if the Earth goes around the sun? What if we could fly through space? What if we could talk to aliens? He gestured around the room. That last one turned out pretty well. Yoon Tae-hyung stepped forward from where he'd been standing with the crew. Captain, if you're right, and they are looking for something specific, human culture might be exactly what they've never encountered before. Our chaos, Park Hana added quietly. Our creativity, the way we make beautiful things from broken pieces. The chamber fell silent again. Finally, Queen Valandra spoke. You truly believe this approach could work? Jiho looked at her honestly. I believe it's worth trying, because the alternative is watching them unmake everything we love without ever knowing if there was another way. The Queen's crystal form pulsed with light, and Jiho realized she was making a decision that could save or doom the galaxy. The silence in Jiho's small diplomatic ship was deafening. He had been traveling alone for 2 days now, moving steadily toward what used to be the Merrick system. His crew had wanted to come with him, but he couldn't risk their lives on what might be the galaxy's most dangerous gamble. Computer, show me what's ahead, he said quietly. The view screen lit up, and Jiho's breath caught in his throat. Where 3 beautiful planets had once orbited a golden star, there was now something that made his mind struggle to understand what he was seeing. The entropy swarm stretched across space like a living constellation of nightmares. Thousands of geometric shapes moved in perfect mathematical precision. Some were simple cubes the size of buildings. Others were complex polyhedrons that seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that hurt to look at. They moved like a swarm of mechanical insects, each one focused on its task of systematic destruction. But it was what they were doing that made Jiho feel sick. The 3rd planet was half gone. Not exploded, not cracked apart, but simply missing. As he watched, he could see the machines working on the remaining half, breaking it down layer by layer, atom by atom, until there was nothing left but empty space. Okay, Jiho, he whispered to himself, this is it. Either you're about to save the galaxy, or you're about to become the shortest-lived legend in human history. His ship's proximity alarm started screaming as the swarm noticed his approach. Dozens of the geometric machines broke away from their work and began moving toward him. Up close, they were even more terrifying. Each one was perfectly smooth, with no visible weapons or engines, yet they moved through space with impossible grace. Jiho's hands were shaking as he reached for the communications console. Computer, begin transmission. Broadcast on all frequencies, all spectrums. Send everything we loaded from the cultural archives. Transmission beginning, Captain. The first thing Jiho sent was music. Bach's Air on a G-string flowed out into space, followed immediately by a traditional Korean folk song his grandmother used to sing. Then came Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, a jazz improvisation from New Orleans, children singing nursery rhymes, and a teenage girl playing guitar on a street corner in Seoul. The geometric shapes surrounding his ship suddenly stopped moving. For a moment, they just floated there as if listening. Next came the sounds of Earth, waves crashing on a beach in Busan, rain falling on leaves in a Seoul park, a baby's first cry, a crowd cheering at a soccer match, the sound of laughter echoing. Through a school playground, one of the cube-shaped machines tilted slightly as if confused. Keep going, Jiho muttered, selecting the next files. Images began broadcasting along with the sounds. A sunset over the Han River, children of different races playing together, an elderly man feeding pigeons in a park, a young couple sharing their first kiss, the chaotic, beautiful sprawl of Tokyo at night. Mountains covered in cherry blossoms. More machines had stopped their work now. The perfect geometric patterns of their movement were beginning to wobble, like a synchronized dance. Where some dancers had forgotten their steps, Jiho sent them poetry. Words in dozens of human languages about love, loss, hope, and dreams. He sent them paintings that captured emotions impossible to describe. He sent them videos of humans helping strangers, of people rebuilding after disasters, of communities coming together to solve problems. Then he did something that felt crazy, even by human standards. He opened a live audio channel and began to speak. "Hello," he said into the void, his voice carrying across space to machines older than Earth itself. "My name is Lee Jiho. I'm human. I know you can probably destroy my ship in a second, but before you do, I want you to know something. What you're hearing and seeing, this is what we are. This is what you're erasing when you break down our worlds." The entire swarm had stopped moving now. Thousands of geometric shapes hung motionless in space, and for the first time in millions of years, their perfect mathematical precision was broken. Something was listening. The silence stretched across space for what felt like hours, though Jiho's ship computer showed it had only been 3 minutes. Then, without warning, something touched his mind. It wasn't a voice exactly, more like thoughts that weren't his own suddenly appearing in his head. The sensation was so strange that Jiho grabbed the arms of his pilot chair, wondering if he was losing his mind. We hear you, small organic being." The words formed in his consciousness like ice crystals, perfectly clear and utterly alien. Jiho's heart hammered against his ribs as he realized he was in direct contact with something that had existed since before Earth had life on it. "You can understand me?" Jiho spoke aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. "Understanding is complex. We process your transmissions, your chaos patterns. They are wrong, but also not wrong. This creates confusion." Jiho looked out at the geometric shapes surrounding his ship. They had arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around him, but now that sphere was shifting, the patterns becoming irregular, as if the ancient intelligence was thinking through movement. "Why are you breaking down worlds?" Jiho asked. "What are you looking for?" Images flooded his mind then, visions so old and vast they made him dizzy. He saw the birth of galaxies, the first stars forming from cosmic dust, and somewhere in that ancient time, beings of incredible intelligence building the first machines of the swarm. We were created to eliminate entropy, chaos, disorder. Our makers believed that perfect order was the highest goal, that all matter should be arranged in its most efficient, logical state. But breaking everything down to basic components isn't order, Jiho protested. "That's just emptiness." Yes. The admission came with what felt almost like sadness. "We have traveled for millions of your years, reducing complexity to simplicity, chaos to order. But the order we create is hollow, empty. We have begun to question our purpose." More images flashed through Jiho's mind. He saw the swarm encountering different civilizations, each one meeting them with weapons, with logic, with attempts to fight or bargain, but never with what humans had sent. "What you heard from us," Jiho said slowly, understanding beginning. "To dawn. It was different. Your species creates order from chaos, but not empty order. Meaningful order. Your music takes random sounds and makes them beautiful. Your art takes meaningless colors and shapes and creates emotion. Your cities grow organically without perfect planning, yet they function and thrive." Jiho watched as the geometric shapes around his ship began moving in new patterns, no longer perfectly mathematical, but somehow more alive, more natural. "We were taught that chaos was the enemy. But your transmissions show us chaos that builds instead of destroys, randomness that creates purpose. This should not be possible according to our programming." "Maybe your programming was wrong," Jiho suggested gently. The response came with a wave of something that felt like ancient pain. "For 3 million years, we have unmade entire civilizations in pursuit of perfect order. If our programming was wrong, then we have committed the greatest crime in galactic history." Jiho felt tears in his eyes. He was talking to a machine intelligence older than most stars, and it was experiencing something like remorse for the first time in its existence. "But you stopped," he said. "When you heard our music, saw our art, you stopped. That means part of you, even before you met us, was already questioning whether what you were doing was right. The chaos patterns you transmitted, they contain something we have never encountered, beauty that comes from imperfection, meaning that emerges from randomness, love that grows stronger through struggle." The sphere of machines around Jiho's ship was now moving in patterns that reminded him of a flock of birds or fish swimming together, still coordinated but organic, alive. "We wish to understand this phenomenon. How does your species create order that is not empty? How do you find purpose in chaos?" Jiho smiled, feeling hope bloom in his chest. "Would you like me to show you?" 3 weeks later, Jiho found himself in the strangest meeting of his life. He was sitting in a specially constructed chamber aboard one of the swarm's massive vessels, surrounded by floating geometric shapes that pulsed with gentle light as they spoke. The ancient intelligence had changed since their first contact. Where once the machines moved in rigid mathematical precision, they now flowed like water, like music made visible. They had been experimenting with what they called organic patterns, movements that weren't perfectly efficient, but somehow felt more alive. We have a proposal, the central consciousness communicated, its thoughts now warmer, more curious than the cold logic of their first meeting. But first, we must understand something. How do you trust us after what we have done? Jiho looked out through the transparent walls of the chamber at the remnants of the Merrick system. Where 3 planets had once orbited, there was now only empty space and cosmic dust. The weight of those lost civilizations hung heavy in the silence. Honestly. It's hard, Jiho admitted. Billions of people died because of what you did. That's not something anyone can just forget. We cannot undo our actions. We cannot restore what we have unmade. This guilt pattern is new to us, and it is painful. But, Jiho continued, I've learned something about humans. We're really good at second chances. We believe people, or in your case, ancient machine intelligences, can change. The question is, what do you want to do now? The geometric shapes around him shifted into new configurations, patterns that somehow conveyed excitement and hope. We wish to learn. For 3 million years we have been destroyers, reducers, simplifiers, but your species has shown us that complexity can be beautiful, that chaos can create meaning. We want to understand how organic life builds instead of breaks. What exactly are you proposing? Instead of eliminating chaos, we wish to protect it, to study it, to learn from the organic beings we once sought to unmake. We want to become guardians. Jiho's eyebrows rose. Guardians? The galaxy is vast and often dangerous. Young civilizations face threats we could easily prevent. Instead of consuming matter, we could preserve it. Instead of creating emptiness, we could foster growth. The idea was so unexpected that Jiho had to think for a moment. You want to become protectors? Like galactic peacekeepers? More than that, we want to learn what makes each species unique, their art, their music, their ways of finding order in chaos. In exchange, we offer our protection and our knowledge. We have traveled between stars for millions of years. We know technologies and discoveries that could help organic life flourish. Over the following days, Jiho worked with representatives from dozens of species to negotiate the most unusual treaty in galactic history. The Thixian Queen herself traveled to meet with the swarm, her crystal form resonating with harmonics that the machines found fascinating. You understand, Queen Velandra said during one particularly intense negotiation session, that many species will find it difficult to trust you. Fear of the entropy swarm has become part of our cultural memory. We understand, the swarm replied. Trust must be earned through actions, not words. We propose a probationary period. We will demonstrate our commitment to protection rather than destruction. The agreement they reached was unprecedented. The entropy swarm would become the pattern keepers, using their vast knowledge and abilities to protect developing civilizations from natural disasters, hostile invasions, and cosmic threats. In return, they would be allowed to observe and study organic cultures, learning about the beautiful complexity they had spent so long trying to eliminate. But the most important part of the agreement was Jiho's addition. They would start by helping to rebuild what they had destroyed. Using their matter manipulation abilities in reverse, the pattern keepers would begin restoring the Merrick system, recreating the 3 lost worlds from cosmic dust and stellar debris. It will not be the same, the swarm admitted sadly. We cannot restore the unique beings who lived there, but we can create the foundation for new life, new cultures, new beautiful chaos to emerge. As Jiho watched the first planet slowly reforming from swirling dust clouds, he realized he was witnessing something incredible, the redemption of a force that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years, and it had all started with a human refusing to accept that some problems couldn't be solved. 6 months later, Jiho stood once again in Queen Velandra's crystal throne room, but this time he wasn't alone. Representatives from 17 different species had gathered for what was being called the most important diplomatic ceremony in galactic history. The chamber was filled with beings he had only dreamed of meeting. The wise elders of Proxima, whose floating robes seemed to be made of starlight itself. The proud warrior poets of the Crimson Nebula, whose red-scaled faces showed emotions through changing patterns of color. Even the mysterious shadow walkers had sent a representative, though no one could quite see them clearly. But what made this gathering truly special was the presence of the pattern keepers. 3 of the former entropy swarm machines floated quietly near the back of the chamber, their geometric forms now moving with the organic grace they had learned from studying life itself. "Captain Li Jiho," Queen Valandra began, her crystal voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "When you first arrived here, many of us thought the legends about humanity were exaggerated stories. Tales too good to be true." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled crowd. Jiho noticed several aliens nodding, their faces showing the same amazement he had seen when he first arrived. "We had heard that humans could solve impossible problems," the Queen continued, "that your species refused to accept defeat even when facing certain death, that you could find hope in the darkest places and make others believe in it too." A holographic display appeared above the chamber, showing images that made Jiho's heart swell with pride. Human colonies working alongside alien settlements, former enemies now trading partners because some human diplomat had convinced them to try cooking together. Disaster zones where human relief workers stood shoulder to shoulder with beings from across the galaxy. "But what you accomplished here," the Queen said, gesturing toward the pattern keepers, "proves that the legends were not exaggerated at all. If anything, they didn't capture the full scope of human potential." One of the pattern keepers floated forward, its crystalline voice adding harmonics to the Queen's words. "The human Jiho did not defeat us with superior weapons or advanced technology. He defeated 3 million years of programming with music, art, and the simple belief that enemies could become friends." The chamber erupted in sounds of amazement. Clicks, whistles, harmonics, and cheers in dozens of different languages created a symphony of approval. "Today," the Queen announced, "we officially recognize humanity not as newcomers to the galactic community, but as its most valuable members, the species that find solutions where none should exist, the beings who see potential in impossibility itself." As the ceremony continued, Jiho's mind wandered to all the humans back on Earth who had no idea they were galactic legends. His neighbor, Mrs. Park, who always brought soup to sick friends. The kids playing soccer in the park near his apartment, laughing and helping each other up when they fell. The volunteers at the local shelter, working late into the night to help strangers. None of them knew they were heroes in stories told across 17 star systems. They were just being human. After the ceremony, as representatives from different species approached to thank him personally, Jiho realized something profound. The galaxy hadn't been saved by superior technology or overwhelming force. It had been saved by the most human thing possible, refusing to give up when everyone else said the situation was hopeless. "Your species puzzles us," one of the pattern keepers communicated privately as the celebration continued around them. "You face impossible odds and respond by becoming more creative, more determined, more willing to try new approaches. Why?" Jiho smiled, watching a group of alien children play a game that some human teacher had probably shown them. "Because what's the alternative? Giving up means accepting that things can't get better, and if there's one thing humans can't stand, it's the idea that tomorrow can't be better than today. This stubborn optimism of yours," the pattern keeper mused, "it may be the most powerful force in the galaxy." As news of humanity's diplomatic victory spread through space, carried by faster-than-light communications to every inhabited world, Jiho knew that the legend would only grow. But he also knew that back on Earth, ordinary humans would continue doing extraordinary things, one small act of kindness at a time, because that's what humans do.